The execution ground. The twin suns were high above the sky of Zorith Prime. The light was harsh. Shadows looked sharp like knives on the ground. A large crowd had gathered in the center of the alien city. Stone towers stood around the square like cold, silent guards. In the middle of the square, there was a tall platform made of black metal. On that platform stood Lyra, an alien woman with glowing blue skin and silver eyes. Her hands were tied in thick iron cuffs. Two large alien soldiers stood on each side of her, holding electric spears. The crowd shouted angrily, "Traitor! Shame on her! She betrayed our people!" Children sat on their parents' shoulders. Old ones watched from balconies above. Everyone wanted to see the execution. It was not just a punishment. It was a warning, a show. Lyra kept her head high. Her face was calm, but her eyes were tired. Her long silver hair moved gently in the wind. She had been in prison for days. No food, no water, only pain and silence. The high judge stepped onto the platform. He wore dark purple robes and a mask of bone. His voice echoed through a speaker. "Lyra of House Velenaar," he said, "you are charged with treason against the High Council of Zorith. You gave information to the enemy. You protected a human soldier. How do you plead?" Lyra did not speak. The judge continued, "You were once a soldier, a leader, but you forgot your duty. For that you shall die here today." The crowd cheered. The soldiers raised their spears. Just then, a loud voice came from the side of the square. "Stop!" Everyone turned. A figure was running toward the stage. It was a human, tall, in a torn space uniform with dust and blood on his face. His name was Captain Daniel Reeve, and he was not supposed to be here. The alien guards moved to block him, but he kept running. "She saved my life," he shouted. "You can't kill her. She's not your enemy." Gasps filled the air. Some aliens stepped back in fear. Others looked confused. A few guards aimed their weapons at him. One of the guards yelled, "He's the escaped human. Shoot him." Daniel stopped in front of the platform, breathing hard. "Listen to me," he shouted again. "I was trapped. You all would have killed me. But this woman, she helped me escape. She disobeyed her orders to save a life. That's not betrayal. That's honor." The judge narrowed his eyes. "You have no right to speak here, human. You are a criminal in our land." Daniel took a step forward. "Then execute me too. But I won't let you kill her alone." The crowd fell silent. Lyra looked down at him. Her lips moved slightly. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "Now they'll kill us both." Daniel smiled up at her, bruised but brave. "Then we die together." The judge gave a signal. More guards came running, surrounding Daniel with weapons pointed. The sky darkened as one of the suns passed behind a cloud. The shadows grew longer. A cold wind blew across the platform. Lyra finally spoke. "If truth is a crime, then yes, I'm guilty." Her voice was strong, clear. The judge lifted a hand. "Then let justice be done." A loud mechanical sound started. The execution machine behind the stage began to power up. Bright red lights blinked. The crowd grew louder again, shouting, crying, ready for the final moment. Daniel struggled, trying to break free from the guards. "Don't do this." Lyra looked at him one last time. For a second, her face softened. She nodded once, calm and proud. But just before the machine could fire, a high-pitched alarm went off. A voice came through the city speakers. "Unauthorized breach in the command tower. Security teams respond." Everyone turned. On a nearby tower, something exploded, fire and smoke rising into the sky. Guards ran in all directions. Lyra and Daniel looked at each other. Something was happening. Something unexpected. Lyra spoke fast. "Whatever you did, you better hope it's enough." Daniel shook his head. "That wasn't me." They both stared at the burning tower. Someone else had just entered the game, and they had perfect timing. Darkness, silence, cold. Captain Daniel Reeve opened his eyes. He didn't know where he was. Everything hurt, his head, his arms, his chest. A strange blue light blinked slowly above him. His hands were tied behind his back. His mouth was dry. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. He was not in his ship anymore. He was in a prison. The floor was metal. The walls were curved, like the inside of a giant tube. The air smelled like rust and chemicals. Strange alien symbols glowed on the doors. Daniel struggled to sit up. His spacesuit was torn, his helmet gone. He remembered crashing. Red warning lights, alarms, the sound of ripping metal. His ship had been shot down over Zorth airspace. Now he was deep inside enemy territory. Footsteps echoed in the distance. He quickly lay back down, pretending to be unconscious. 2 alien guards passed outside the cell, tall, armored, with skin like black stone. One of them glanced inside. "Still alive," the guard said. "For now." They walked on. Daniel waited, then slowly sat up again. He noticed something, a soft voice, coming from the other side of the wall. "You're awake," it said. Daniel froze. "Who's there?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Someone who also shouldn't be here," the voice replied. It was a female voice, calm, intelligent. An alien. Daniel crawled closer to the wall. There was a small crack near the floor. "Are you Zorati?" he asked. "Yes," she said, "but not like them." He paused. "Then what are you doing in a prison?" There was a long silence. "Same as you," she finally replied. "Punished for knowing too much." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" The voice replied softly. "They tell you the war started because of human greed, that we're defending our land from your invasion. But that's not the whole truth." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. She continued, "I once worked with your kind. In secret, I believed we could have peace. But when I found out what really started this war, they locked me up." Daniel asked, "What did you find?" Another pause. Then she said only 2 words. "A lie." Time passed slowly in that prison. They talked through the wall every few hours. No names, just thoughts. Daniel told her about Earth, the cities, the oceans, the music. She told him about Zorith, the twin suns, the crystal forests, the glowing rivers. They argued sometimes. They laughed once or twice. They weren't supposed to be friends. But something strange was happening. A kind of trust. That night, something changed. Alarms blared through the prison. Red lights flashed. Daniel stood up. "What's happening?" The alien woman, still behind the wall, said, "They're moving me. They don't want me to talk to you anymore." Suddenly, a loud blast shook the prison. A small panel in Daniel's wall popped open, damaged by the shock. His door unlocked with a click. "What the?" he whispered. She spoke fast. "Listen, I made a plan. Only enough power to open your door, not mine. You need to escape." Daniel hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll slow them down. You get out. Find my satchel. Inside it is proof. Proof of everything." "Where?" "They'll keep it in your crashed ship. Hidden, maybe guarded. But it's there." Daniel looked back at the broken door. Freedom. Then he looked at the wall. Her. "You're giving me a chance to live and stay silent." She didn't answer. He said, "What if I come back for you?" Now she laughed softly. "Then you're more foolish than I thought." But Daniel didn't smile. He just whispered, "See you soon," and ran into the dark hallway. Back in her cell, Lyra leaned against the cold wall, eyes closed. A guard entered seconds later. "You'll pay for this," he growled. But Lyra only smiled. Outside, Daniel escaped into the night. Behind him, the prison burned. Ahead of him, the truth waited, hidden inside the wreckage of a broken ship and the lies of 2 powerful worlds. Ashes were still in the air. Daniel Reeves stood alone, staring at the twisted remains of his crashed ship. It looked like the bones of a dead animal. Metal ribs broken, wires hanging like torn nerves. The crash had happened only 3 days ago, but it felt like a lifetime. The air smelled of burned fuel and wet soil. Sparks still hissed somewhere deep inside the wreck. Daniel slowly stepped forward, boots crunching on black glass. The forest around the wreckage was quiet. Too quiet. He whispered to himself, "This better be worth it." He carried a bruised body, a bleeding shoulder, and a promise, made to an alien woman in a prison cell. Find the satchel. Find the truth. He climbed into what was once the cockpit. The ceiling was crushed. The control panel was dead. But something strange caught his eye. A box bolted under the pilot's seat. It wasn't human tech. It shimmered faintly. Smooth edges. Markings that moved like ink under glass. He reached for it, but the moment his fingers touched the surface, the box hummed. A quiet voice spoke. It was neither human nor alien. It spoke in symbols and sounds he didn't understand. Then it changed. User confirmed. Memory key unlocked. Daniel's eyes widened. The top of the device opened slowly like a flower. Inside was a small silver cube glowing with soft green light. It began projecting an image into the air, a hologram. An alien stood there, old, thin, wearing a robe, eyes shining bright white. Daniel sat still, breathing quietly. The hologram spoke in English. "If you're seeing this, then you are not one of them. You are a seeker of truth. You must understand. This war was never between humans and Zorati." Daniel leaned in closer. "Long ago, our two races were manipulated by a hidden species. We called them the Shadari. They are not soldiers. They are shadows. Parasites. They don't fight wars, they start them." Images appeared behind the speaker. Ghost-like creatures moving through darkness, wrapping themselves around leaders, whispering in their ears. They feed on fear, chaos, and control. They live inside our systems, our governments, our stories. Daniel clenched his fists. Lyra discovered this. She tried to warn both sides. That is why she is marked for death. The hologram faded, and the cube dimmed. Daniel sat in silence for a moment. Everything he'd been told about the war, the enemy, the mission was a lie. Lyra had risked everything to show him the truth. And now she was going to die for it. Suddenly, a sharp sound behind him. Snap. Daniel turned quickly, hand on his sidearm. A figure stepped out from the trees. It wasn't Zorati. It was something else. Pale skin, thin frame, eyes like glass. The voice was soft and cold. "You weren't supposed to find that." Daniel backed away slowly, keeping the cube behind him. "Let me guess," he said. "Shadari." The creature tilted its head. "We were happy in your silence. But now we must clean the mess." It raised a small black device. Daniel dove sideways just in time. A silent beam of light passed where his head had been. He rolled behind the wreckage and fired back. The beam hit the creature's shoulder, and it shimmered, flickering like a broken screen. Its voice echoed, "You can't stop what has already begun." Daniel grabbed the silver cube and jumped through a broken panel in the ship's side. He hit the ground hard and kept running into the forest. Behind him, the creature vanished like smoke. Night fell fast. Daniel hid in a cave near the river, breathing heavy. He stared at the glowing cube in his hand. "You were right, Lyra," he whispered. "Now the question is, can we stop them before they stop us?" He opened his communicator and looked at the signal map. One blinking dot, Zorati capital, where Lyra was being held, where her execution was only a day away. And now he had proof. But getting there, alive? That would be the hard part. It was not a dream. Daniel Reeves sat in a broken cave, the silver cube glowing beside him. Outside, the forest was quiet, too quiet. The only sound was the soft hum of the alien device, pulsing like a heartbeat. He hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. The cube had shown him something that changed everything. A hidden race, the Shadari, starting wars, controlling minds, hiding in the dark like puppeteers. And Lyra, she wasn't a traitor. She was the only one who saw the truth. Daniel looked up at the stars. Back on Earth, people looked at the stars and made wishes. Here, they looked up and made war. As dawn broke, Daniel activated the cube again. It glowed, and the old alien's hologram returned. "They live among you, invisible, silent, feeding on fear." This time, new images appeared, Zorati leaders and even human generals with strange shadows behind their eyes. The hologram zoomed in. The shadows had shape. Barely visible parasites latched to the nervous system, whispering silently into minds. Daniel whispered, "They're in both governments." The hologram continued, "We tried to expose them. They erased us, our history, our names. But one survived. Her name is Lyra." Then came her face. Young, proud, unbroken. Daniel stared at her image. Flashback. Lyra, years earlier, standing in a Zorati control chamber. A younger Daniel at her side. They're not enemies. They're allies. Working together. A secret mission. Shared data. Smiles hidden behind stress. She had trusted him once. Risked everything. And now he had left her to die. Daniel shook the memory away. He stood. Time was running out. He reached into the bag and found something else. A metallic bracelet with soft blue lights. He placed it on his wrist. It activated with a soft chime. Biolink confirmed. Cloak active. Daniel smirked. Thanks, Lyra. She had left him tools. And now he would use them to get back into the Zorati capital. Hours later, he walked through the outer slums of the capital, cloak active. The alien streets were cold and gray. Drones buzzed overhead. Soldiers marched near the walls. Giant glowing screens played public announcements. Lies, warnings, war chants. The traitor will be executed at first light. Daniel watched one screen closely. Lyra was shown, bound, silent, eyes full of fire. He clenched his jaw. Not today. He found a contact, a low-level tech smuggler in the city, someone who still remembered him from the peace missions long ago. Her name was Taka, a three-eyed alien with a voice like broken glass. "You're crazy for coming here," she said, hiding him in a back room. "I need access to the broadcast tower," Daniel said, "and I need to find someone on the inside who still believes in the truth." Taka laughed. "You think truth still matters here?" He placed the glowing cube on the table. The room fell silent as the hologram flickered on. She watched the Shadari crawl behind her leaders. Her smile disappeared. Later that night, in the shadows of the broadcast tower, Taka handed him a small device. A signal burst. 1 minute. If you plug it into the tower system, the truth goes out to the whole planet. Daniel nodded. And Lyra? Taka looked down. They moved her to the central square. Final ceremony. She won't last long. Daniel placed the device in his pocket. 1 minute's all I need. Back in the city square, preparations for the execution had begun. Lyra stood in chains again, same platform, same judge, same crowd. But this time, she didn't look tired. She looked ready. She stared into the crowd. Somewhere, she knew he was watching. In the shadows of a rooftop, Daniel waited. One chance. One signal. One truth. He whispered, "Hold on, Lyra. I'm coming back." And then, for the first time since the war began, the truth was no longer a secret. The drums began. Slow. Heavy. Like thunder from the ground. Each beat echoed across the city square. The people of Zorith stood in silence, thousands of them. Soldiers lined the streets. Drones floated overhead, watching from every angle. Giant screens lit up the buildings, showing one face, Lyra. She was kneeling on the Blackstone platform, her hands locked behind her back, chains around her arms and legs. Her silver hair hung low. Her eyes were open. She did not beg. She did not cry. She was ready. Above her, the high judge raised his staff. His mask glowed red. "Today," he said, voice booming through the speakers, "we erase a traitor from history. Let this be the final lesson to all who would defy the will of Zorith." The crowd murmured, but something was wrong. The air changed. A strange tension rolled through the square, like static before a storm. A voice shouted, "Wait!" Every head turned. A man stepped out from the edge of the crowd. Human, dirty, bruised, with a cloak falling from his shoulder. Some gasped. Others stepped back. It was Daniel Reeve, unarmed, unafraid. Guards raised their weapons instantly, but Daniel kept walking toward the stage. "I have something to say," he called out. "Silence," barked a guard. "You have no place here, off-worlder." But Daniel raised something above his head. The silver cube. It glowed brightly, pulsing like a heartbeat, until it floated into the air on its own. The judge hesitated. The crowd went silent. And then, the cube activated. A hologram burst into life, massive on every screen across the city. The old alien's voice filled the air once more. This war is a lie. Your leaders are not your own. Your enemy is not the humans. Your enemy is inside the room. Images flashed across every screen. Zorati leaders, whispering with shadowy figures behind them. Human generals, eyes glowing faintly under strange light. The Shadari revealed. The crowd gasped. Mothers covered their children's eyes. Soldiers looked at each other in confusion. The judge froze, and Lyra finally looked up. Her eyes met Daniel's. A soft smile touched her lips. He had come back. But it wasn't over. The judge raised his staff. This is a trick. Human technology. Deception. But the cube responded on its own, scanning him, and showed something live on the screen. A slow scan of the judge's body, and then there it was, a crawling, twisting shape beneath his skin. A Shadari. The crowd screamed. Some began to run. Others stared in horror. Guards didn't know what to do. Some lowered weapons. Others raised them at the judge. Daniel stepped forward. This war was built on fear, but truth is louder. The judge shouted something in a strange language, and suddenly collapsed, clutching his chest. The parasite was tearing out, exposed. Chaos exploded. Lyra was still chained, but a young soldier, shaken, confused, stepped onto the stage and dropped his weapon. He looked into her eyes. "You knew," he whispered. Lyra simply nodded. He unlocked her cuffs. She stood, tall and proud again. Daniel reached the stage. For a moment, among the fire, shouts, and flashing lights, everything paused. They stood face to face. "You came back," Lyra said quietly. "You were right," Daniel replied. "I usually am." He smiled. Sirens began to wail. Enemy ships roared overhead. The Shadari had been exposed, and they were not going quietly. Daniel looked at her. "We just started a war within a war." Lyra nodded. "Then let's finish it." The city was burning. Smoke rose into the purple sky of Zorith. Ships flew low over rooftops. Sirens howled in every direction. But deep below the surface, in an old underground chamber, there was silence. Lyra sat on a stone bench, hands folded in her lap. The room was lit by a single blue crystal on the ceiling. Its light flickered like candlelight. The walls were carved with symbols from an ancient time, a time before the war, before the council, before the lies. Across from her stood Daniel, watching a circular table in the center of the room. On the table was a hologram of the Shadari. Not a picture, a moving model. Slow, dark, disturbing. It was shaped like smoke wrapped in skin. Long fingers, eyeless face, and hundreds of tiny threads that reached into brains and hearts. The hologram was projected by someone standing in the shadows. An old alien, pale blue, thin like paper with long black robes. One of the silent keepers. A secret group that hid from both sides, watching, waiting. He finally spoke, voice thin but sharp. "You were never meant to see them." Daniel crossed his arms. "Too late." The keeper nodded. "They do not use weapons. They use fear. They do not conquer cities. They conquer minds." He turned to Lyra. "You were the first to resist their voice. The only one to survive full contact." Daniel looked at her, surprised. "You never told me that." Lyra didn't blink. "Because I'm not proud of it." She stood, slowly. "They tried to use me, whispered into my thoughts, showed me images of my family, dying over and over, promised peace if I obeyed, promised pain if I didn't." She clenched her fists. "But they made one mistake. They showed me the truth." The keeper activated another file, a real image from a deep Zorith archive. It showed both human and Zorati leaders, sitting together, smiling. Years ago, before the war even began. Daniel stared. This This was before the first battle. The keeper nodded. The Shadari created a shared enemy, then watched both sides destroy each other. Why? Daniel asked. The keeper turned. Because peace makes us strong. War makes us weak. And weak species are easier to control. Lyra stepped forward. We need to tell the people. On both sides. Show them this. The keeper shook his head. They won't listen. Not yet. Daniel frowned. Why not? The keeper touched the crystal on the wall. Suddenly, a map appeared, glowing lines across dozens of worlds. Red marks blinked on many planets. Human colonies. Zorati capitals. Lyra whispered, "They're everywhere." Daniel realized what it meant. They're not running. They're expanding. Suddenly, the crystal flickered. A new signal entered the room. A distorted voice, harsh and unnatural, echoed through the chamber. You see too much. Speak too much. You will burn with the rest. The hologram of the Shadari began to twist, as if aware, alive, angry. The room shook. Cut the link, Lyra shouted. The keeper smashed the device with his cane. The signal died. Everyone was silent again. Daniel exhaled. They're watching us. No, the keeper said. They're warning us. Lyra looked at Daniel. We can't wait anymore. If we don't act now, they'll wipe this from history too. Daniel nodded. Then we fight, not just to survive, but to expose them. The keeper moved toward a shelf and pulled out a small, worn datapad. This has coordinates, he said. A place called Black Echo, a hidden relay. It can broadcast across both networks, human and Zorati. He handed it to Lyra. You get there. You tell the galaxy. And then, he stopped. Daniel asked, What? The keeper looked at the stone wall. Then we pray they don't shut it down before the truth reaches someone who still cares. As they left the chamber, heading toward a stolen transport, the sky above the city flashed red. Not just fire. A fleet was arriving. Ships with no symbols. No flags. Silent. Lyra whispered, They're here. Daniel stepped beside her. Then we don't run. He stared at the clouds, then at the stars. We rise. The stars were no longer silent. Above the city of Zorith, black ships moved like shadows. Smooth, fast, and without sound. No warning. No symbols. No mercy. The Shadari fleet had arrived. From a distance, they looked beautiful, like falling stars across the sky. But from below, people saw the truth. War was coming again. And this time, it would leave no one behind. Underground, inside a stolen transport, Daniel tightened the straps of his armor. Beside him, Lyra held the datapad with trembling fingers. Not fear. Focus. The map showed a point outside the city, deep in the desert mountains. Black Echo, a forgotten broadcast tower, buried long ago when the war began. It's still working? Daniel asked. Lyra nodded. The council shut it down, but they never destroyed it. Too risky. It's wired into both our networks. Daniel checked his weapon. Then we light it up. As the transport roared through the wastelands, dust filled the air. From a cliff above, a drone watched them. His eyes blinked red. Far away, a message was sent. Target moving. Send the hounds. Hours later, the transport reached a cliffside covered in rocks and dead trees. No towers. No antenna. Just silence. Daniel stepped out. Are we sure this is it? Lyra walked ahead and placed her hand on a stone. Suddenly, the rock glowed. With a soft hum, a hatch opened in the ground, revealing a stairway lit by blue lights. Daniel whistled. Nice trick. They entered. The chamber inside was massive, filled with old alien tech, wires like vines, and a dusty broadcast chair in the center. Broken screens lined the walls. Everything looked dead. Lyra walked to the main console and placed the datapad on it. The system blinked to life. Power returned. Lights glowed. Screens buzzed. A voice said, Broadcast relay activated. Global signal link. 72 seconds. Daniel looked up. We've got just over a minute. Then came the sound of footsteps. Dozens of figures stepped out of the shadows, not soldiers, not even alive in the normal sense. They wore cloaks of flesh and bone, eyes glowing white, hands twitching with long, sharp fingers. The Shadari agents had come. Lyra backed up. Keep them away from the signal. Daniel raised his rifle. With pleasure. The final battle began. Daniel fired, shots echoed through the chamber. Lyra ducked behind the console, hands flying across the panel, trying to open the signal to every major colony and capital. The Shadari moved like wind. Fast, quiet, terrifying. One leaped at Daniel. He slammed it into the wall, where it cracked like glass and melted into smoke. Lyra's voice rang out. 30 seconds. The largest Shadari appeared now, taller than the rest, face covered in shifting symbols. Its voice filled the room like a whisper in every ear. You think truth matters? You think they'll believe a traitor and a human criminal? Lyra stared back. No, but they'll see. The console sparked. A screen flashed. Live transmission. All networks. Lyra stepped into the center. Her face was calm. Her eyes burning. She began to speak. People of Zorith. People of Earth. You don't know me. You've only seen the story they told you. A traitor. A spy. A monster. She looked into the lens. But here is the truth. The war you fight was given to you. It was planted like a poison. Your enemies are not each other. She pressed a button. Behind her, on every screen, the Shadari were shown in their true form. Parasites, puppeteers, monsters hiding behind laws and flags. The signal went out. In cities across both planets, people stopped. Soldiers dropped weapons. Children pointed at screens. Leaders stared, silent and pale. The world was watching. Back in the tower, the last Shadari screamed and lunged for Lyra. Daniel tackled it midair. Both crashed to the floor. He shouted, "End it! Now!" Lyra turned and pushed the final command. The broadcast locked. The truth was now permanent, saved, spread, unstoppable. The chamber shook. A Shadari ship above had fired its first missile. Lyra ran to Daniel, pulled him up. Alarms rang. Walls cracked. Fire burned from the ceiling. "We have to go." "No," Daniel said, pulling her toward the exit. "We have to live." Outside, the desert was glowing red from the falling ships. But one small escape pod launched into the sky. Fast, quiet, unnoticed. Inside, Lyra and Daniel sat in silence, breathing, alive, and for the first time in a long time, free.